Rain glazed the tarmac like black glass, mirroring the limousine's headlights as it rolled to a stop outside a towering structure of steel and tinted glass. The wind bit cold across the plaza, whipping the hem of Anya's coat as she stepped out first, clutching her small translation tablet to her chest. Behind her, James Whitmore emerged, tall, silver-haired, his tailored overcoat cutting a sharp silhouette against the gloom. The billionaire philanthropist's calm stride contrasted with her quiet tension. The building was silent except for the faint hum of security drones gliding past the entrance. Two guards in dark suits stood by the revolving doors. They didn't smile. Anya noticed their posture, stiff and military, the kind that spoke of discipline rather than customer service. Their eyes flicked between James and her, assessing, measuring. Inside, the air was warmer but sterile, smelling faintly of metal and ozone. The walls gleamed with digital art, shifting blue patterns like data streams. A receptionist, or perhaps an assistant, approached with a rehearsed smile and led them toward a private elevator. Anya trailed slightly behind, her earpiece already tuned to the murmur of the guards outside. Old habit. She listened everywhere, all the time. That's when she heard it. The voices, muffled but distinct, filtered through the static of her earpiece. Russian. She frowned, glancing subtly toward the glass doors as they began to close. The guards were speaking quickly, one low and urgent, the other responding with clipped authority. Pozol Vistrasi, bez suma. After the meeting, no noise. Anya froze mid-step, her throat went dry. The elevator chimed softly, and James turned, noticing her hesitation. Everything all right? She nodded automatically but her heart was racing. Yes, just checking the schedule. Her accent thickened slightly when she lied. She prayed he wouldn't notice. They entered the elevator. It began to rise smoothly, the floor vibrating faintly beneath their feet. Through the glass panel, the city's skyline unfolded, towers rising through mist, their lights swallowed by low clouds. James studied her reflection. You're pale, Anya. Jet lag. She forced a smile, her fingers tightening around the tablet. Something like that, but her mind was elsewhere. Why Russian? The company hosting the meeting was supposed to be a Swiss-based humanitarian technology group, Consortium Helios. She'd done the background checks herself. The directors were Swiss, British, American. Not one Russian national listed. She tried to dismiss it. Maybe the guards were contractors, hired for security. Eastern European firms often staffed international events. But the tone had been wrong. It hadn't been casual conversation. It was command and compliance. When the elevator doors slid open, they stepped into a corridor carpeted in gray, lined with abstract art. The woman leading them gestured toward a glass conference room at the end. Inside, the long table was set with bottles of mineral water and neatly arranged digital folders. Three men waited there, their suits immaculate, their faces shadowed by the light above. Anya's instincts screamed. She felt it again, that faint electric pull of danger she couldn't yet name. Something in the stillness, the way the men didn't rise to greet them. The subtle flicker of one man's eyes to the security camera above the door. James adjusted his cufflinks, smiling easily as he stepped forward. Shall we? Her hand shot out, gripping his sleeve before she could think. Wait. He turned, surprised. Anya. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost inaudible. Don't go in. He blinked, caught between confusion and concern. What are you talking about? She leaned closer, eyes darting to the men beyond the glass. The guards downstairs. They were speaking Russian. They said, after the meeting, no noise. James frowned. You're sure? I'm fluent, she said, her voice trembling now. Something isn't right. For a long moment, neither moved. The hum of the lights filled the silence. Then James glanced past her toward the conference room again. One of the men at the table lifted his head, as though sensing hesitation. Their eyes met through the glass. The man smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile given to a partner in business. It was slow, deliberate, like a blade being drawn. Anya's grip tightened. Please, she whispered. Let's leave. Now. James didn't argue this time. He turned smoothly, his voice calm but his jaw tense. You're right. We'll reschedule. They began walking back toward the elevator, their footsteps soft and even, pretending nothing was wrong. Behind them, the conference room door creaked open. And from the shadowed hall beyond, The low murmur of Russian voices followed them again. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing them in a narrow capsule of mirrored steel. The hum of machinery filled the silence between them. James stood with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the numbers ascending above the door, but his reflection betrayed unease. Anya watched him from the corner of her eye, trying to keep her breathing steady. Her fingers trembled slightly around her tablet. When they reached the lobby, James finally turned to her. "Tell me exactly what you heard." She hesitated, glancing toward the reception desk where the smiling woman still sat, too still, like a mannequin waiting for its cue. "They said, after the meeting, no noise." In Russian. "I'm sure of it. It was an order." Could they have meant something else? A metaphor, a phrase? She shook her head. "No, it was literal. I've worked with Russian military translators before." The tone was command, short, direct, the kind used in operations. James exhaled through his nose, thinking. "You're saying this meeting is a trap." "I'm saying," she whispered, stepping closer, "that something about this place doesn't fit the profile you were given. The guards, the language, the way they look at us." Her voice trembled but her eyes didn't. "We shouldn't be here." James glanced back toward the hallway they'd come from. 2 guards now stood by the corner, speaking quietly into their earpieces. They hadn't been there before. He smiled faintly, as though indulging her, but his hand slipped discreetly into his coat pocket, not for a weapon, but for his phone. The screen refused to connect. "No signal," he muttered. "They're jamming the network." Anya's throat went dry. "We have to leave." "Agreed," he said, his tone clipped now. Calmly. "Follow my lead." They crossed the lobby with measured steps. The receptionist looked up, her lips parting as if to speak, but James raised a hand in polite dismissal. "Apologies," he said smoothly. "An urgent call from Geneva. We'll have to postpone." The woman's smile didn't falter, but her eyes flicked to the guards. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Allow me to." "That won't be necessary," he cut in, his voice suddenly colder. "We know the way." They passed through the glass doors into the open plaza. Rain had started again, fine and steady. Their driver stood by the car, umbrella in hand, oblivious to the undercurrent of danger. Anya quickened her pace, clutching James's arm. "They'll come after us," she whispered. "Once they realize we're leaving." "I know," he said, already scanning the street. "Get in the car." She hesitated, glancing back at the building. Through the glass, 2 of the guards were watching, murmuring into radios. The elevator lights above them flickered. "Now, Anya," James said sharply. She climbed in. The driver shut the door behind her and started the engine. As the limousine pulled away, James kept his gaze on the building, expression unreadable. Inside, Anya's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She could still hear the echo of those Russian words. Pozol Vystrasi, bez suma. After the meeting, no noise. She turned to James. What were they going to do? He didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the rain-blurred city ahead. "Whatever it was," he said finally, "we were never meant to leave that room alive." The car accelerated into the night, the sound of the rain swallowed by the growl of the engine, and behind them, in the dark tower, figures were already moving. Alarms hadn't sounded, but the air itself seemed to tremble with tension. Every sound, the buzz of a fluorescent light, the faint shuffle of a distant guard, felt amplified in Anya's ears. She and James moved swiftly through the corridor, careful not to run, their shoes whispering across the polished floor. The elevator they'd used was locked behind a keypad now, someone had sealed it remotely. James's expression hardened. "We can't go back down that way." Anya nodded, already scanning the hallway. "Service stairs. There must be another exit near the logistics level." She pointed toward a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The handle was cold under her fingers, but it gave way with a click. Inside, the space narrowed into a concrete stairwell dimly lit by emergency strips. The industrial echo of their steps followed them down. Halfway to the next floor, the voices came, sharp, echoing up from below. Russian again. The tone wasn't casual anymore, it was the clipped, controlled rhythm of men coordinating positions. She caught words that froze her blood. "Oni idet Venez. Derzi e mezdu etazami. They're going down. Trap them between the floors." Anya turned, eyes wide. "They know we're here." James glanced over the railing. We need to go up instead. Roof access. She hesitated for half a second, then followed. Their footsteps quickened, echoing like drumbeats. Somewhere below, a door banged open, and boots began pounding on the stairs. The chase had begun. By the time they burst through the final landing door, the corridor above was dark except for a line of red safety lights. The smell of dust and machine oil hung in the air. They were near the maintenance level, pipes running along the ceiling, cables trailing the walls. James moved with surprising composure for a man whose life was in danger. He'd survived boardroom wars, but this was something else entirely. Anya pulled out her phone and switched it to record. I can distract them, she said breathlessly. Their radios are open frequencies. If I speak Russian, I can mislead them. James gave her a look, part disbelief, part admiration. You can do that, she nodded, already typing commands into her translator interface. Her voice, when it came through the small speaker, was crisp, authoritative. Abekt napravlitsa k liftu, blokirujte severnij corridor, target heading to the elevator. Block the north corridor. The pursuing footsteps faltered. She could hear their confusion, two of them muttering back, arguing over the new direction. It bought them precious seconds. They reached the end of the hall where a heavy steel door stood ajar. Beyond it, a faint whirring sound, the roof ventilation system. Anya pushed it open and was hit by the chill of open air. The roof spread out before them, slick with rain, ringed by red warning lights. A helipad occupied the center, its paint faded but functional. James's pilot, a wiry man in a dark flight suit, turned from the waiting helicopter as they appeared. Mr. Whitmore. What happened? No. Time, James snapped, ushering Anya forward. Get us in the air now. The rotor blades began to spin, their rhythmic thump drowning out the sound of approaching shouts from below. Anya climbed in, hair whipping around her face, eyes scanning the stairwell door as figures burst onto the roof, shadows with rifles glinting in the rain. Go, James shouted. The helicopter lurched upward just as gunfire cracked through the storm. Bullets sparked against metal, one punching through the side window. Anya ducked instinctively, gripping the seat's edge. As they rose above the city, she looked down at the shrinking figures on the roof. They stood in the rain, motionless, watching. No pursuit, no attempt to follow, just silence, eerie and deliberate. James leaned toward her, his face pale but resolute. They weren't here for a deal, he said quietly. They were waiting for me. Anya met his gaze, rainwater and tears indistinguishable on her cheeks. I know, she whispered. And this isn't over. The helicopter sliced through the storm, its blades beating a furious rhythm against the night. Below them, the city spread out like a living circuit board, veins of gold and silver light snaking through the dark. Anya pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the world fall away beneath them. Her heartbeat hadn't slowed since the chase began. Every flash of lightning seemed to drag her back to the image of the guards, the glint of rifles, the quiet smile of the man behind the glass. James sat opposite her, soaked to the skin, his expression unreadable. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough with disbelief. They were going to kill me. In a corporate boardroom. No questions. No demands. He gave a bitter laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. All this time I thought I understood power. Anya turned to face him. They knew your schedule, the exact time you'd arrive, the route you'd take. That wasn't random. Someone inside gave them everything. James's jaw clenched. Someone I trusted. He looked out at the storm, his reflection flickering in the window. Helios wasn't just a meeting, it was bait. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. We've got a tailwind, but radar's showing a small craft about 3 kilometers behind us. Could be a drone. Anya's stomach tightened. Can it reach us? Not if we're lucky, the pilot replied, pulling the craft higher into the clouds. The helicopter shuddered as it climbed, rain hammering harder against the windows. Anya reached for her bag and pulled out her tablet. I recorded everything I could. The Russian transmissions, the conversation in the stairwell, even part of the meeting room feed before we left. She tapped the screen, the faint glow illuminating her face. It's proof. Whoever's behind this wanted you dead, not negotiated with. James leaned forward, his eyes on the data streaming across her screen. We'll need to find out who they were working for. Russian operatives don't move without purpose. She hesitated before speaking. I recognized one of the voices downstairs. I can't be certain, but it sounded like someone from the Petrovia group. They've been quietly buying into your European holdings for months. James exhaled slowly, realization dawning. So this wasn't business rivalry. It was elimination. Lightning flashed again, painting their faces white for a split second. The pilot swore softly under his breath. The drone's closing in. Hang on. The helicopter jerked violently to the side. A dark shape streaked past the window, a small, fast craft with a blinking red sensor. Anya's hand shot out, gripping the seat. The pilot dove hard, cutting through the clouds toward the coastline. The sudden drop forced the air from her lungs. Then, a second later, the drone vanished from the radar. The sea appeared below them, vast and endless. The storm began to thin, revealing a faint line of dawn on the horizon. For the first time in hours, there was silence. James turned to Anya, his voice quiet but steady. You saved my life tonight. She shook her head. I just listened. He smiled faintly, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. That's more than most people do. From now on, you're not just my interpreter. You're my guardian angel. Anya looked back at the fading city, where danger still simmered beneath the rain. Guardian angels don't run, she said softly. They fight. The helicopter pushed on into the sunrise, its shadow gliding over the restless sea, two figures bound not by chance, but by the echo of a warning that had changed everything.